Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the vast council chamber and felt small. The room stretched upward for hundreds of meters, designed to make every species feel insignificant. 47 different alien races filled the seats around her, each one representing a civilization older than humanity could imagine. Some had been traveling between stars, when humans still lived in caves. Others had built empires spanning hundreds of worlds before Earth invented writing. Chen had been Earth's representative for 5 years now. In that time, she had learned one hard truth. The Galactic Council did not respect humanity. They tolerated humans the way wealthy families tolerate poor relatives at dinner. Today's session had been routine and boring. 2 species argued about a border dispute. The insect-like Vijral wanted 3 star systems. The dolphin-shaped delphines claimed those systems first. The council debated for hours, finally splitting the systems between them. Chen watched and said nothing. Humans had learned to stay quiet during important votes. Nobody cared what the newcomers thought. Then Councillor Schvarn stood up. He belonged to the Arconate, the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. His gray skin seemed to shimmer under the chamber lights. When he spoke, his voice carried authority that came from 10,000 years of dominance. Honored Council, I present Resolution 4471, the Protective Custody Initiative. Chen felt her stomach tighten. She pulled up the resolution text on her datapad and started reading fast. The language was complicated, full of legal terms that meant nothing and everything at once, but she understood the core message. The Council wanted power to take control of species they called dangerous or unstable. They could place these species under guardianship for their own protection and the safety of others. This is about us, Chen whispered to her assistant. They're targeting humanity. Her assistant, a young man named Marcus, had gone pale. Can they do this? They're about to find out, Chen said. She activated her microphone and stood up. Councillor Schvarn, I must object to this resolution. Humanity requests more time to review these terms and present our response. Schvarn looked at her the way someone might look at a child interrupting adult conversation. Ambassador Chen, this resolution has been under review for 6 months. Your government received copies. We have discussed this in committee meetings you attended. The time for debate has passed. We vote now. 6 months? Chen felt her anger rising. This resolution number didn't exist 6 months ago. You created this yesterday and buried it in routine paperwork. This is a trap. Chen, thanks for watching. And next time, Selvin. This per videos. Chen. Chen felt her anger rising. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. They knew she was right. But nobody spoke up. Nobody wanted to anger the Arconate. Ambassador. Control yourself, Schvarn said coldly. This council has procedures. We follow them. All in favor of Resolution 4471? Hands, claws, tentacles, and appendages rose around the chamber. Chen counted them with growing horror. 38 species voted yes. Only 7 voted no. 2 abstained. The resolution passed. Schvarn smiled, showing teeth that looked like broken glass. The Protective Custody Initiative is now law. Enforcement will begin immediately for any species deemed necessary. Chen stood frozen. Around her, the council moved on to other business. They discussed trade agreements and cultural exchanges. They acted like nothing important had happened, like they hadn't just voted to enslave humanity. She left the chamber on shaking legs. Marcus followed her, already typing on his communicator. I'm sending emergency codes to Earth Command. They need to know. They know, Chen said quietly. What Chen knew, what Schvarn and the council had forgotten, was that humans never stopped preparing for the worst. 50 years ago, when humanity first encountered the Galactic Council, Earth's leaders had been thrilled. First contact. Peaceful aliens. A chance to join a galactic civilization. But the military had remained suspicious. They remembered human history. They knew what happened to weaker groups when stronger powers offered protection. So while diplomats like Chen attended council meetings and smiled, the military had been busy. They stole technology whenever possible. They reverse-engineered every alien device they could buy or salvage. They studied council military tactics and looked for weaknesses. They built hidden shipyards in dark spaces between stars. They prepared. Most importantly, they had kept their best weapons secret. The council thought humanity only had basic ships and simple weapons. They had no idea what Earth's military could really do. Back in her apartment on Zenthara Prime, Chen accessed her secure communication system. Messages were flooding in from Earth. The military had intercepted council transmissions. They knew what came next. Within 72 hours, a council fleet would arrive at Earth. They would demand humanity's surrender. They would disable Earth's defenses and occupy the Sol system. They would place humanity under permanent control. The council had done this before to 3 other species. It always worked. Those species had submitted. They had accepted their new place. Some had even thanked the council for bringing them stability. But those species weren't human. Chen read the final message from Earth Command. It was short and simple. Ambassador, leave Zenthara Prime immediately. War is coming. We will not submit. Humanity will never submit. She sat down slowly and looked out her window at the beautiful alien city below. Soon it would burn. The council had no idea what they had awakened. They thought humanity was weak because humans were young. They thought Earth would surrender because surrender was logical. They had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. The council had forgotten the most important thing about humanity. Humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain, not because they were strongest or fastest. They survived because they never knew when to quit, because they fought dirty, because they would burn the whole world down rather than accept chains. Shvarn and his ancient species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They thought they understood war. They had no idea. Chen began packing. She had 48 hours to escape before the killing started. Behind her, on her desk, a message notification blinked. It was from Admiral Kovac, commander of Earth's space forces. She opened it and read one sentence. "Tell them we said no." Admiral Kovac watched the council fleet appear on his sensors like a disease spreading across clean skin. 847 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. They formed perfect geometric patterns, showing off their discipline and numbers. They wanted humanity to see how hopeless resistance would be. The Admiral was 62 years old. He had been in Earth's military for 40 years, rising through ranks during humanity's expansion into space. He had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and kept peace in the outer colonies. But he had trained his whole career for this moment. The moment when the galaxy showed its true face. "Sir, incoming transmission," his communications officer said. "It's Counselor Shvarn himself. Put him on screen." The alien's face appeared, looking smug and certain. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship showed hundreds of crew members working at stations. The ship itself was 3 times larger than anything humanity had built. It could probably destroy Earth's entire fleet alone. "Admiral Kovac," Shvarn said in that condescending tone, "I am here to enforce Resolution 4471. You have 1 hour to transmit your command codes, power down your weapons, and prepare for Council peacekeepers to assume control of your vessels. Compliance will be noted favorably. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Kovac looked at the alien for a long moment. He thought about his daughter, who lived on Mars with his 2 grandchildren. He thought about his parents, buried on Earth. He thought about every human who had ever lived and died, believing humanity would one day walk among the stars as free people. "No," he said simply. Shvarn's expression shifted from boredom to confusion. "Excuse me." I said no. We will not surrender. We will not submit. If you want our ships, come and take them. The alien's face darkened with anger. "You cannot possibly believe you can resist. We have 847 capital ships. Our intelligence reports you have only 340 vessels in this system. This is mathematics, Admiral. Accept the inevitable." Kovac smiled without humor. "Your intelligence is 50 years old. You've been watching us, sure, but you've only been seeing what we wanted you to see. You have 1 hour to leave our system. After that, we will consider you hostile invaders, and we will respond accordingly." He cut the transmission before Schvarn could answer. His second-in-command, Commander Park, looked worried. "Sir, we really do only have 340 military vessels." "He's not wrong about the numbers. We have 340 military vessels," Kovac agreed. "But we have 2,400 civilian ships in system. Cargo haulers, mining vessels, colony transports, and every single one has been weaponized. We've spent 50 years preparing for this. Time to see if it works." The hour passed in tense silence. Humans across the Sol system said goodbye to families, checked weapons, and prepared to die. Not because they wanted to, but because they refused to live on their knees. When the hour ended, Schvarn sent another transmission. The Council fleet advanced. They came in confident and organized, their massive ships moving in perfect formation. They expected to sweep aside human resistance in minutes. They had overwhelming firepower and superior technology. Victory was certain. They reached Mars orbit before the ambush triggered. What looked like ordinary cargo ships suddenly revealed hidden missile pods. Thousands of rockets launched simultaneously, far more than the Council's sensors had detected. Mining stations in the asteroid belt activated railguns that fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Some of those slugs were the size of cars, accelerated to near light speed. The Council's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and conventional missiles. They were not designed to stop a 5-ton chunk of iron traveling at relativistic speeds. When those slugs hit, they went through shields like they weren't there. 3 Council ships disappeared in nuclear fire before Schvarn even understood what was happening. "All vessels, evasive maneuvers," he screamed. "Return fire." Aye, but humanity didn't fight the way civilized species fought. There were no organized battle lines, no honorable exchanges of fire. Human ships darted in like sharks, fired everything they had, then ran before the Council could target them properly. Smaller vessels worked in packs, overwhelming single targets. When human ships got damaged too badly to continue, their crews deliberately rammed them into Council vessels. The civilized galaxy had abandoned such tactics thousands of years ago. Kovac watched the battle from his command ship near Jupiter. He saw his people dying. Every explosion meant hundreds of human lives ended. But the Council was bleeding worse. Their formation broke apart as captains panicked. Some ships retreated. Others fired wildly, hitting their own vessels. Then humanity deployed their surprise. Biological weapons, tailored to specific alien species DNA. Cyber attacks that corrupted the enemy's computer systems. Chemical agents that broke down their ship hulls. Nuclear mines, hidden in space. Every dirty trick humanity could devise. Saved up for 50 years. Unleashed all at once. The Council had forgotten these weapons existed. They had evolved past such barbarism. But humanity remembered. Humanity had perfected them. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 60% of humanity's fleet was gone. 2 billion people died. Mars had been bombarded so hard that parts of it were glowing red. But the Council fleet was shattered. 71% losses. 600 ships destroyed or crippled. And Schvarn himself was dead. His flagship torn in half by 3 cargo ships that had rammed it simultaneously. The surviving Council vessels retreated in disorder, running away as fast as their damaged engines could manage. Behind them, humanity's battered survivors didn't celebrate. They just started preparing for the next attack. because everyone knew this was only the beginning. Admiral Kovac broadcast a message to every human in the Sol system and beyond. His face was grim, covered in blood from a head wound. Behind him, his bridge showed damaged stations and injured crew. "We won today," he said quietly. "But winning this battle means we've started a war we might not survive. The Council will come back with everything they have. They'll try to exterminate us. So I'm asking every human, everywhere, to make a choice. Surrender now, and maybe they'll show mercy. Or stand with Earth and fight for our freedom, knowing we might all die." He paused, then continued. "Our ancestors came down from the trees and walked upright. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They went to the moon, with computers weaker than our phones. They never had the best tools or the most power. But they had one thing that couldn't be beaten. They refused to quit. That's what makes us human. Not our weapons or ships. Our refusal to accept chains. Across human space, from Earth to the furthest colonies, the answer came back unanimous. No surrender. Not now. Not ever." Humanity began the largest military mobilization in its history. Every factory was converted to weapons production. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Volunteers lined up to join the military. Even children as young as 12 were trained in basic combat, just in case. The Council wanted war. They were about to learn what total war meant. What happens when you back humans into a corner with nothing left to lose? They were about to learn their mistake. The emergency council session lasted 3 days. Representatives from 47 species argued, shouted, and blamed each other for the disaster at Sol. Nobody could believe what had happened. A primitive species had destroyed over 600 council ships. Shvarn, one of the Arconate's greatest military leaders, was dead. The unthinkable had occurred. High Counselor Vex Thar of the Arconate addressed the assembly with cold rage. His species had ruled the council for millennia. They had never faced such humiliation. "We have 2 choices," he said. "Negotiate with these animals, admitting weakness to the entire galaxy, or crush them so completely that no species ever dares resist us again. I say, we crush them." Counselor Miranash, representing the peaceful Luminar species, stood up trembling. "That's genocide you're proposing. Billions of deaths. We are supposed to be civilized. They killed our people?" Vex Thar snapped. "They used biological weapons, chemical attacks, suicide vessels. They fought like savages. And you want to reward such behavior with negotiations?" The vote was close, but the hardliners won. The Council authorized the largest military mobilization in galactic history. 47,000 ships would be assembled from a dozen species. It would take 6 months to organize. But when that fleet arrived at Sol, humanity would be erased from existence. The galaxy watched and waited for humanity to beg for mercy. Instead, humanity attacked. 3 days after the Council vote, Admiral Kovac launched Operation Broken Chain. Human strike teams had spent 50 years mapping Council space, identifying critical infrastructure, studying targets. Now they used that knowledge. Across 200 light-years, human ships appeared without warning. They didn't attack military bases where defenses were strongest. They hit civilian targets that kept the Council economy running, shipyards where new vessels were built, manufacturing centers that produced components, communications hubs that connected systems, trade routes that moved supplies. The attacks were surgical and devastating. Human stealth technology, developed from old submarine warfare tactics, let them slip past sensors. Once in position, they struck hard and fast, then vanished before reinforcements arrived. On the Arconate colony world of Kethvar, 3 human ships destroyed the planet's main orbital shipyard. Thousands died. The facility had been building ships for 3,000 years. Now, it was debris. The Vril lost their primary weapons manufacturing complex when human agents sabotaged the facility's reactor core. The explosion was visible from space. The Council's central communication network went dark for 6 hours after human cyber attacks corrupted every backup system simultaneously. But the worst part, the part that terrified the civilized galaxy, was how humans didn't seem to care about their own survival. They used suicide tactics constantly. Pilots would fly damaged ships directly into critical systems, killing themselves to destroy the target. Some volunteers didn't even try to escape. They just completed the mission and died. The Council had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that fought without honor, without mercy, without any concern for the rules of civilized warfare. After 2 months of attacks, the Council's economy was collapsing. Ships sat in dock without fuel. Colonies couldn't communicate with their governments. Trade had stopped completely. Some species were facing food shortages. Councillor Miranash made an emotional speech to the assembly. We started this war. We voted to enslave them. Now we act shocked that they fight back. Maybe we should consider that we were wrong. But Vexthar refused to budge. We cannot show weakness. We will destroy them, no matter the cost. Yet cracks were forming in the Council alliance. Some species began secret communications with humanity. The Cathara, a reptilian race that had always resented the Arconate's dominance, started providing intelligence about Council fleet movements. The Vurine, a trading species losing billions, began selling humans advanced technology in violation of every Council law. Smaller species saw opportunity. For centuries they had followed the Council's rules, accepting their inferior positions. Now, someone was fighting back, and winning. Humanity broadcast messages across the galaxy, not in complicated diplomatic language, but in simple terms everyone understood. We don't want to rule you. We don't want your worlds. We just want to be free. The Council tried to chain us. We're showing them what happens when you chain a human. We break the chains. Then we break everything else until we're free again. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Council's revenge fleet finally assembled. 47,000 ships, the largest military force ever created. It represented the combined might of a dozen ancient civilizations. Nothing could stand against it. They traveled to the Sol system, expecting a final, glorious victory. Expecting to find humanity cowering on Earth, ready to surrender. The system was empty. Every human was gone. Earth had been evacuated. Mars, Venus, the moons of Jupiter, all the colonies, completely abandoned. Millions of people had simply vanished, taking everything they could carry and destroying everything they couldn't. The fleet found only automated defenses, which they easily destroyed. And a recorded message from Admiral Kovac played on every ship's screen simultaneously. The Admiral looked older, more tired. You came here expecting to find us waiting to die, he said. But humans don't work that way. You wanted to teach us our place in your precious council. Congratulations. You succeeded. You taught us there is no justice in your civilization, no honor in your laws. You taught us that in this galaxy, only the strong survive, and the weak get enslaved. Thank you for that lesson. He leaned closer to the camera. We're not waiting here to be exterminated. We're out there now, in your space, among your worlds. You'll never see us coming. You'll never know where we'll strike next. We'll keep fighting until you're broken, or we're dead. There is no third option anymore. You made sure of that. The message ended with coordinates. Curious, the fleet's commanders checked them. The coordinates pointed to a location deep in Arcanate territory. When they sent scouts, they found an entire colony world burning. 3 billion Arcanate citizens dead. Human ships had glassed the planet 6 hours earlier. The message was clear. You wanted total war. Now, you have it. High Counselor Vex Thar stood on his flagship's bridge, staring at the images of the burning world. It was one of the oldest Arcanate colonies, settled 8,000 years ago. Now it was ash. For the first time, he felt something he had never experienced. Fear. The fleet couldn't stay at Sol. There was nothing to defend, no target to destroy. So they returned to Council space, trying to protect everything. But you can't protect everything. Humanity had learned to fight as ghosts, striking from shadows, never staying to face the fleet directly. The war continued. 3 months became 6. 6 became 12. The galaxy bled. And humanity, far from being crushed, seemed to be growing stronger. 3 years into the war, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. The golden age of peace and prosperity was over. Now every species lived in fear, wondering when humanity would strike next. Humanity had become ghosts. Nobody knew where their main fleets were hidden. Intelligence suggested they built secret shipyards in dark spaces between stars, places where sensors couldn't reach. They manufactured weapons in asteroid fields and on rogue planets drifting through empty space. They were everywhere and nowhere. On the Council world of Thex Prime, a convoy of supply ships simply vanished between planets. 2,000 crew. Gone without a trace. No distress signal. No debris. Just empty space where 12 ships should have been. On the research station orbiting Kelmar, scientists arrived at work to find all the station's defensive weapons disabled. A message written in human language was painted across the main airlock. "We were here. We could have killed you. Remember that." A colony world named Haven's Rest woke up to find its entire orbital defense network had been reprogrammed overnight. The weapons now targeted the planet itself, instead of protecting it. It took 6 weeks to fix. And during that time, the colony was completely defenseless. Humanity never attacked. They just wanted the Council to know they could have. The psychological warfare was as damaging as the physical attacks. Nobody felt safe anymore. Council species began withdrawing their military forces from the combined fleet, pulling ships back to defend their home territories. The alliance was fracturing. The economic damage was catastrophic. The galactic economy had been built on reliable trade routes and stable infrastructure. Now, ships traveled in armed convoys that were still attacked. Colonies couldn't get supplies. 3 species faced serious food shortages. 2 others experienced internal rebellions when their governments couldn't maintain basic services. Commander Sarah Chen, the daughter of Ambassador Chen Wei, led one of humanity's hunter groups. Her small fleet of 20 ships specialized in hit-and-run attacks on Council industrial targets. Over 3 years, they had destroyed 17 major facilities without losing a single vessel. She sat in her captain's chair reviewing their next target. A manufacturing complex that produced power cores for Council ships. Taking it out would cripple their shipbuilding for months. "Captain, we have a problem," her sensor officer said. "Council patrol just entered the system. 50 ships. They're between us and our exit route." Sarah made a quick decision. Deploy the decoys and go silent. Full stealth mode. Her ships powered down everything except life support. They drifted like dead rocks while projecting false sensor images in multiple directions. The Council patrol chased the decoys for 6 hours before realizing they'd been tricked. By then, Sarah's fleet had slipped away and destroyed the manufacturing complex from a different angle. This was how humans fought now. Never direct confrontation. Always from shadows. Hit where you're not expected. Run before they can respond. Disappear completely. But humanity wasn't just surviving. They were adapting and growing stronger. They recruited from disaffected populations on Council worlds. People who had been oppressed by the Council's rigid hierarchies saw humanity as liberators. Some joined human crews. Others became spies and saboteurs in Council territory. Human scientists, freed from Council restrictions and driven by survival necessity, made breakthrough after breakthrough. They perfected weapons the civilized galaxy had abandoned. Antimatter torpedoes that could crack planets. Dimensional rifts that tore ships apart at the molecular level. Experimental weapons that barely seemed possible. The Council tried everything to counter humanity. They hired mercenaries, but humans killed them or recruited them. They developed new sensor technology, but humans stole it and created better countermeasures. They attempted to infiltrate human populations, but humans were too paranoid and caught every spy. High Counselor Vex Thar called an emergency meeting of the Council's inner circle. Only the most powerful species were present. They met in a secret location, afraid that humans had infiltrated even their highest levels of government. "We are losing," Vex Thar said bluntly. "Our economy is collapsing. Our people live in fear. Our alliance is breaking apart. We must accept reality." Counselor Tarvek of the military-focused Krenth Empire shook his massive head. "We cannot surrender. It would destroy our credibility. Every species in the galaxy would rebel if they saw the Council defeated by primitives." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Counselor Miranash, who had opposed the war from the start. "We've tried everything. They're not just surviving. They're winning." Tarvek pulled up a holographic display. "Operation Pyre. We've been developing new tracking technology. We believe we can locate their hidden bases. Once we find them, we use planet-killer weapons. We exterminate them completely." The room fell silent. Planet-killer weapons were banned. They had been outlawed for 5,000 years, considered too terrible even for war. "You're talking about genocide," Miranash whispered. "Billions of human lives. They've killed trillions of our citizens," Vex Thar said coldly. "They fight without honor or mercy. Why should we show them what they refuse to show us?" The vote was close, but it passed. Operation Pyre was authorized. The Council would find humanity's hidden bases and destroy every single one. It would take 2 months to position the weapons and locate the targets, but then humanity would cease to exist. What the Council didn't know was that humanity had infiltrated their intelligence services. Human agents, some having undergone painful surgery to appear as other species, worked in high-level positions. They heard about Operation Pyre within hours of its authorization. The information reached Admiral Kovac, who now commanded humanity's forces from a hidden fleet base in a nebula 300 light-years from Earth. He was 65 years old now, looking 75. The war had aged him badly. He called together humanity's leadership council. They met via encrypted quantum communication, each person commanding a different fleet in a different location. No single person knew where all of humanity's forces were hidden. It was safer that way. "They're planning to exterminate us," Kovac said without preamble. "Then, we hit them first," said General Martinez, commander of humanity's largest battle group. "We've been developing our own doomsday weapon. Stellar compression devices. We can make stars go supernova. I've got 83 Council core worlds already targeted." The room went quiet. 83 stars meant 83 solar systems. Thousands of worlds. Trillions of beings. It would be the largest mass killing in galactic history. Sarah Chen spoke up, her voice uncertain. "That would make us monsters. We'd be worse than they are. They started this war." Martinez shot back. "They tried to enslave us. They've tried to exterminate us. We do this, or we die. Simple choice." The debate raged for hours. Some argued for mercy. Others demanded revenge. Everyone understood that whatever choice they made would define humanity forever. Finally, they voted. The count was close, but the hardliners won by 3 votes. Operation Prometheus was authorized. In 72 hours, humanity would trigger 83 supernovas simultaneously. 5 trillion beings would die. Admiral Kovac sat alone after the meeting ended, staring at the countdown timer. 72 hours until humanity became the galaxy's greatest monster. He thought about his grandchildren. They were 12 years old now. Trained soldiers because the war demanded it. What kind of galaxy would they inherit if humanity did this? He had fought for 3 years to keep humans free. Now, he was about to commit genocide to protect that freedom. He wondered if that made him a hero or a villain. Probably both. 48 hours before humanity's deadline, Admiral Kovac received an unexpected transmission. The encryption codes identified it as coming from Zenthara Prime, the Council's capital world. More specifically, from Ambassador Chen Wei. He stared at the notification for a long moment. Chen had stayed behind when the war started, living among the Council species for 3 years. She sent intelligence occasionally, but never anything like this. This was a direct communication, which meant she had risked everything to send it. Kovac opened the message with shaking hands. Chen's face appeared, older and more worn than he remembered. She was speaking quickly, urgently. Admiral, I'm sending this, knowing it might be a trap, but you need to know. 22 Council species have overthrown the hardline leadership. We did it 3 hours ago. Bloodless coup. Vex Thar and the others are in custody. The Council is under new management. She leaned closer to the camera. We're offering terms. Full negotiations. No preconditions. Your security is guaranteed. Operation Pyre is cancelled. Please, Admiral, I know you don't trust them, but this is real. I'm including verification codes and live feeds from the Council chambers. You can see it's legitimate. The message ended with data files. Kovac opened them and saw real-time footage from inside the Council. Vex Thar being led away in restraints. New councillors taking positions. Official announcements being broadcast across Council space. It looked real, but it could still be a trap. He called an emergency meeting of humanity's leadership. The countdown clock showed 46 hours remaining. 46 hours. Until Operation Prometheus turned 83 stars into supernovas. It's a trap, General Martinez said immediately. They're trying to make us stand down so they can complete Operation Pyre. We can't trust them. Read. Chen sent verification codes, Commander Sarah Chen argued. Those codes can't be faked. And look at the live feeds. That's real chaos in the Council chambers. Something big happened. So they had a coup, Martinez shot back. That doesn't mean they've changed. They might just have new leaders who want to finish the job. The debate was fierce. Humanity had spent 3 years learning to trust no one. The Council had tried to enslave them, then exterminate them. Why would anyone believe they wanted peace now? Admiral Kovac listened to both sides. He thought about his grandchildren, trained as soldiers at 12 years old. He thought about the 5 trillion beings who would die if Operation Prometheus proceeded. He thought about what humanity would become if they committed genocide. We're canceling Operation Prometheus, he said quietly. The room erupted. Martinez stood up angrily. Admiral, you're making a mistake. If this is a trap, then we die. Kovac interrupted. But if it's real, and we go through with the attack, we murder 5 trillion innocent beings. We become exactly what they claimed we are. Monsters who don't belong in civilization. They tried to exterminate us, Martinez said. Why should we show mercy? Because that's what makes us human, Kovac replied. Not our weapons. Not our tactics. Our ability to choose to be better than our worst impulses. I'm canceling the operation. That's final. The vote went to the full council. It was close, but Kovac's position won by 6 votes. Operation Prometheus was cancelled with 12 hours to spare. 83 stars would continue burning. 5 trillion beings would wake up tomorrow never knowing how close they'd come to death. Negotiations began immediately. Ambassador Chen Wei represented the new council leadership. Admiral Kovac represented humanity. They met on a neutral space station. Both sides heavily armed and suspicious. The negotiations lasted 6 months. They were difficult and painful. The council had to admit they had been wrong. They had tried to enslave humanity without cause. They had started a war that nearly destroyed galactic civilization. Some counselors struggled with that admission. Pride is hard to swallow. But humanity had demands that were non-negotiable. Full autonomy for human space. Complete access to all council technology. Reparations for the war damages. 5 permanent seats on a reformed council. War crime tribunals for those who initiated the Protective Custody Initiative. A constitutional amendment. Guaranteeing rights for all species. The council agreed to everything. They had no choice. The alternative was more war, and everyone knew the galaxy couldn't survive that. The Treaty of New Horizons was signed on neutral ground, witnessed by representatives from every galactic species. It completely reformed the council structure. No more would ancient species dominate younger ones. No more protective custody initiatives. Real democracy, with real representation. Humanity gained significant power in the new structure, but they shared it with their wartime allies. The Cthera, the Vurine, and others who had helped humans during the Dark Years got seats at the new council. The Old Guard, species like the Arcanate who had ruled for millennia, were reduced to equal status with everyone else. War crime tribunals were held. Vex Thar and the other hardliners were convicted of crimes against sapient species. Their sentences were severe. Some went to prison for life. Others were exiled to remote colonies. But humanity surprised the galaxy by arguing for leniency in some cases. Officers who had just followed orders were pardoned. Civilians who had supported the war out of ignorance were forgiven. Humanity didn't want revenge. They wanted to build something better. The galaxy slowly healed. Trade resumed. Economies recovered. The wounds were deep, but time helped. 50 years after the treaty, the galaxy had transformed completely. Ambassador Chen Wei, now 98 years old, attended a ceremony on New Earth, humanity's new capital world. They were unveiling a memorial to the war. The memorial was simple but powerful. A black stone wall listing the names of every human who died. 2 billion names. It took hours to walk past them all, but at the top of the memorial, carved in letters that could be seen from space, was a message. They tried to cage us. We taught them we could never be caged. But in teaching them, we nearly became what we hated. Never forget our greatest victory was choosing not to destroy them when we could have. Sarah Chen, now an admiral herself, stood with her grandmother at the ceremony. Her own children played nearby, growing up in a galaxy that knew peace. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Sarah asked. Stopping Operation Prometheus? Chen Wei watched the children playing. Yes, because those children grew up knowing humans chose mercy over revenge. That's a better legacy than being the species that killed 5 trillion beings. The Battle of Sol was now taught in every military academy across 1,000 worlds. Humanity's 3-year campaign was studied as the most effective asymmetric warfare in galactic history. But the real lesson wasn't about fighting. It was about knowing when to stop. The Council's mistake had been simple but fatal. They assumed humanity would submit because submission was logical. They forgot that humans never learned how to surrender. Only how to survive. Only how to fight until nothing was left. But humanity's victory hadn't come from destroying the Council. It came from choosing not to, even when they had the power. That choice earned respect no military victory could have achieved. Admiral Kovac had died 5 years earlier, at age 87. He never lived to see the galaxy fully healed. But at his funeral, representatives from every council species attended. Even the Arcanate, who had hated humanity most, sent dignitaries. His last words, recorded before his death, were played at the ceremony. "We fought for 3 years to stay free. But freedom isn't just the absence of chains. It's the courage to not put chains on others. We won the war the moment we chose mercy. Everything after that was just paperwork." The galaxy had learned. The Council had learned. Everyone had paid a terrible price for that education. But maybe it was worth it. Because now, 50 years later, humanity walked among the stars as equals. Not because they had the biggest guns, not because they were the most ancient, but because they had proven that even pushed to the edge of extinction, even with the power to destroy their enemies completely, they could choose to be better. They could choose to be human. The Council's single mistake had been underestimating humanity. They thought humans were just another primitive species to be managed. They learned too late that humans were something else entirely. Something dangerous when cornered. Something terrifying when pushed to extremes. But also something remarkable. A species that could wage total war for 3 years, develop doomsday weapons, and then choose not to use them. That was humanity's true strength. Not their violence, not their tactics, their ability to step back from the abyss at the last moment. And that was why, 50 years later, humanity led the Council in not just military strength, but moral authority. Because when it mattered most, they had chosen the harder path. The path of mercy. The galaxy would never forget that lesson. Neither would humanity.